Come on, Butler, let's go.
Oh my goodness gracious. Hey, we're looking at Wednesday, December 6th, learning time, as we get into more Shadow Club together. Novel homework comes due tomorrow, book report. If you want to turn in early, it's due in 2 days. If not, it's due 1 week from today. The Toys for Tots, if you are wanting to do the Toys for Tots, then you can bring the Toys for Tots in, and it does get you B points between 1 and 4 points for each toy you bring in, depending on how big it is or how good it is, up to a maximum of 15 points. And then we have the Winter Dance coming up this Friday, goes until 4:30, $5 from there. Our checkpoints, reading-wise, page 70 was actually due today, if you hadn't gotten there, because we're going to pick up on that point. Page 130 by Sunday at the end of this weekend, page 168 by next Friday, and then page 200 by the following Monday. And we're going to take that final test after that. Next week, we're not going to have a whole lot to be able to read together, so that's why I tried to make it a little bit less reading-wise, just because we're going to be able to read on our own. We have other things going on. With the book coming up, let's see, so we got into who's all in the Shadow, we'll say back up. Who starts the Shadow Club? Cheryl and Jared. Cheryl and Jared together, because they were trying to get, and then they have a bunch of people who end up joining the Shadow Club. Let's see, who is the first one they ask? Randall. And then, let's see, and then you also have to admit that someone's better than you at something. And who's better, or what is Randall second best at? Swimming. I think the kid's name is Drew Landers?
Yeah.
Drew Landers is who's better than him. And then they bring in a music-y person. Jason, yeah, Jason Perez. Is it, I think it's trumpet that he plays. And so he brings in, it's the second, and they have a sporty person.
Tall guy.
Darren? Darren. And plays basketball, and he's the second best player on the team. And then they bring in a smarty person. That's
OP.
What does OP stand for?
1 point.
1 point. The kid's name.
The real smart.
Can't remember his name. I want to say Alex. It's not right.
It's Austin.
No, it's not Austin either. That's the.
Austin is Jared.
But something. There's a smart kid.
I'll look for it.
Abby. Oh no,
No.
that's a piece. It starts with the A.
Abby's the good-looking one.
Carrot hand.
That's OP. That's not who's smarter than her. I was trying to think of who's smarter than Karen. But OP.
Tommy Nicholas.
Tommy Nichols, that's who it is. He always beats her by 1 point, and then calls her OP because of that 1 point. And then the last one we have, is that Abby Singer?
Yeah.
And then what is it Abby Singer's second best at?
Being popular.
Being hot and popular. And so she is the second hottest, popularest person there. And they all join, and the problem is, they try to, and where is it they meet? And that's when they're like, hey, let's hang out and like go to movies together. And the other kid's like, that's stupid. I have friends already. And then what is it they decide to do together that makes the club make it fun?
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's go torture people. And they're like, hands in for torture. Torture. And they get all excited because torture makes everything better. Then they begin Operation Torture Other Kids. The first one they do is the torturing of Rebecca. And what do they do with Rebecca? The old snake in the thermos trick. So when she's at lunch and then she freaks out, she's like, ah! And she throws the snake through the air, and they get awesome revenge, and they all get all giggly and play stuff like that. And then, poor dead snake. And then we got to.
Wait, did the snake die?
No.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, we can't have him.
Guys, I think it's just a book.
No, it's not. Reading is life. So now we get to find out. The reason this part's up here is we're going to get to a section in a moment where it's going to deal with one of the characters being colorblind. If you're unfamiliar with how colorblind works, if someone's colorblind, it does not mean that you see the world in black and white. It means that certain colors blend together. So like on these, a lot of times red-green is the most common type of colorblind, where some people, you look up there, you won't be able to see anything but a bunch of dots. If you are not red-green colorblind, you're going to see like a sailboat, a fish, and like a small monkey. And you can see the ones that are up there. I'm just messing with these numbers.
Am I colorblind? I can't see the last one.
And so you have, I think it's like
71.
62?
74.
And then 6.
That's 62.
74.
That's 72.
I'm trying to look at it backwards in a screen.
The
So
left
it's
one's
a little
62.
I can't
see.
over there, 62, and then 6.
74.
If you can't see it, then there's a chance you might be somewhat
He's
colorblind.
colorblind.
Or you have bad perspective.
What if I'm
If
normal
I
blind
see
and I
dots,
can't
is
see
that
it?
okay? Okay. Why do you say so?
Well, you have to see the number in the dots.
Yeah.
I'm not
Everyone can
colorblind,
see the
though.
dots. If you can't see the dots, that's called blind. If you can't see the numbers, that's the colorblind, because different ones have different colors on them. So that's going to pop up here in a moment where they're going to deal with the character who's colorblind. That's what colorblind is.
I think I might have run ahead.
Yeah, I kind of stopped in the middle of the exciting part. Page 71, that's where we get to pick up together.
Yeah, I ran ahead.
Vera Donaldson, the most popular girl in school, had a diary that she talked about, but never ever brought to school. She also had a 9-year-old brother who, and as everyone knows, 9-year-old brothers can be bribed. With Randall as mastermind, we found ourselves sitting in the middle of Stonehenge, with Vera Donaldson's diary sitting there with us. "This is scary," said Jason. "It's like we got some sort of Bible with us." Randall smiled. "Vera's entire life is in this book. Dare we wreck it?" asked Cheryl, and everyone screamed, "Yes, yes!" We handed the diary to Abby, and she read all about Vera's little life, which really did sound like a soap opera, until we came across a juicy bit of information that was just the sort of thing we were looking for. When the meeting was over, Randall and Cheryl took the diary to the nearest copy shop and brought along their collection of dimes. By dinner time, the diary was back in the hands of Vera's little brother, and she never knew it was missing. When morning came, everything was ready. All of us arrived super early to put up the papers around school. Nobody suspected. Vera arrived at school and was greeted by a piece of paper taped to the front entrance that said the following in her unmistakable handwriting. "Dear Diary, it's getting worse. I see him every day, and I want to talk to him, but I can't. I don't think he likes me. I'm sure he doesn't. I'll bet he thinks I like all those guys that keep asking me out. I love the clothes he wears, and I love the way he talks, but he never talks to me. I love his hairstyle, and you know, he really has grown taller over the summer. I'm sure of it. I can't tell anyone, Diary, because they'll all think I'm nuts. But I think I'm in love with Martin Bricker, and I don't know what to do." I was there when Vera saw it. She didn't scream. She just sort of moaned in disbelief. Other kids had seen it already. Half the school had read it. Vera tore the page down and ripped it up. But as she went in, she saw the same piece of paper on every single classroom door in the school. Everybody stared at her. "Martin?" they sneered. "You like Martin?" Even Tyson McGaw laughed at her. And if Tyson laughs at you, you know you're in trouble. Vera, you see, was a 9th grader. And Martin was an 8th grader. A short 8th grader. If ever in history there were two people not meant to be together, these were the two. Vera's face turned red, although it was hard to see it beneath all that makeup. And she ran into the girls' bathroom, where she stayed till at least 3rd period. Martin Bricker, on the other hand, was in heaven all day. A quick pause, I was thinking about that. Is what the Shadow Club just did bullying?
No.
No. Why?
That's because it's just exposing.
So then what, in your words, what do you call that?
That's just being
That's just
being
being mean to
Huh,
someone.
alright.
It's
Because that's what I
YouTube,
was-
but in real life.
Curious if that happened. Would you
actually
say
helping
that
me.
Vera bullied Abby with what
No.
you've seen so far?
No,
No.
she's more popular.
She's just
Well, then she rub it in her face.
She's better than her.
How about,
She gets everything.
how about Austin? Does Austin bully Jared?
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So I was trying to see, I was going through there, it doesn't seem like all the characters bully. Well, I think they get like mixed back and forth like between the different things. I was like, it doesn't seem like.
Like Rebecca doesn't bully anybody.
That's what I thought. Like Rebecca, the
She's
poor
just
girl that got the
good.
snake, she
She's
doesn't.
good.
She's just better. That's what I thought so too. So like interesting.
She got the
So that whole, and like I was like, well, it's definitely mean posting. I mean, you kind of ruin a kid's life with the whole posting of the diary thing. But if that's not bullying, I guess it's just being a
See, you get reminded of that.
big fat jerk.
Who has a diary?
You know, back in the day.
Yeah.
Just as Jason Perez had told us, David Berger and his silver trumpet got all the solos in band, and he was always called to play with the high school band. At this weekend's high school football game, he had a solo that neither he nor anyone sitting in front of him would ever forget. It was a simple enough plan that OP had thought up, but it would have been easy to get caught there in broad daylight under the bleachers. OP had a lot more guts than anyone gave her credit for. The band had warmed up and gotten ready to play. Jason told us that once their first march started, David wouldn't play a note until his solo came up, and that was perfect. After warming up, David put his trumpet down next to him. He didn't notice when it was pulled away underneath the bleachers a moment later, and then returned to the exact spot where he had left it. The song began. David stood up for his solo, blew into his mouthpiece, and a whole container full of green slime poured out of the other end. It was just the kind of green slime you could buy in any toy store, but that didn't matter. It was disgusting, and that's all that anyone cared about. The band leader and half the football team stared at David in amazement. David, still unsure of what was going on, blew harder into his trumpet, and the green slime blew out of the end and all over the band. As far as the band was concerned, this was the end of the world. They all began to yell and run out of his way as David blew into the trumpet again, sending slime flying. This time, along with a dull tone from the trumpet that sounded pretty rude. I'm guessing it's supposed to sound like a fart. In 10 seconds, the band had cleared out and was running to the locker rooms to get out of their slimed outfits, leaving David alone, his face turning red as he continued to slime the bleachers. Does that count as bullying?
No. I mean, that's just
It's his
extreme
fault.
bullying.
It's
They're
his
just
fault for
like
leaving his
humiliating.
instrument unattended.
Well, I think it's
He was
while they're
next
doing it.
I
you
think
feel
he
like
was next to it.
he's on the stands. I think while you're playing, you sort of set it down. It's not like he went out like a
But
walk.
how did he see all that green slime? I mean, it's extremely jerky, but it's
But
not
here's the
as
thing.
It's just a prank.
It's-
He didn't even know he did it.
When they first did it,
It's just a
when
prank.
it happened the
It's
first
over and over
time,
again.
it was kind of mean. But when it kept happening, that was his fault at that point.
The hole kept blowing into it every
Yeah.
time. Yeah. I think he was just confused.
What's his eyes? What's he
Well, I don't think he saw it.
That could be true. Because I was like, I guess you're.
Wait, why is there one?
Well, why is everybody
My-
Why is everybody covering me in slime?
These people.
Why is people screaming at me to stop?
Liking and getting revenge on, they're not really bullying, but I think that now that they're doing it, it kind of feels like bullying because they were doing really mean things that these people didn't really do.
But they're not doing it to
So
the
they're not
same
doing it to the
person.
same
I
person,
mean,
so
all
it
of
can't
us
do
do
something.
And that's also
stupid.
you're not doing
I
it.
mean,
you're doing
it's not a
different.
repeated action.
Kalanga.
I feel like Austin's the only one that is,
I can see that.
Actually, no, because the person, the OPs.
Ooh, ooh. Because the
Yeah.
fact that the whole what's his name, Tommy Nichols.
Yeah.
When he does his bullet, I can see that because it's Rip always saying that the 1 point ahead of her.
But that's
Yeah.
not, I feel like that's just messing around almost. Like,
yeah, I think like it's just
But
teasing.
at the same time, does OP consider it teasing?
No.
Oh, she should.
That's a girl.
Well, here's the thing though, because we're agreeing that the Gopher nickname is bullying, but we can't agree that the OP nickname is.
Yeah. Why can't Jared just take it take it
What
in
if
fun
she likes
too?
it?
Yeah.
well, Austin repeatedly does it.
That
It's
is-
so difficult. But nobody joins in.
The next trick by far was the most dangerous. I was there because it was my turn to pull a prank. Cheryl and Randall came along to watch. Midnight, Wednesday. We stood outside Drew Lander's open bedroom window. Maybe we ought to think of another trick, said Cheryl. The lights were out in the house and we were sure Drew was asleep, but still. No way, said Randall. This is perfect. Perfect. We have to do it. Trust me. Drew can sleep through anything. Once he fell asleep in math, and they couldn't even wake him up. They had to call in the nurse. Cheryl turned to me. If you still want to do it, then I'm with you. I smiled and carefully removed the screen, then climbed in through the open window. Yes, they are breaking and entering into someone's house.
Yeah, that's illegal.
It's okay, it's for a prank.
It's still really illegal.
Drew Lander's room was a mess. I mean, I've seen my room get pretty scary, but this was a pigsty. It was hard to walk without stepping on things that crunched. Drew slept under a mass of covers in his bed. We could hear him snoring more loudly than the roar of the filter on the huge fish aquarium in the corner. Look at this. whispered Randall, pointing to a whole row of swimming trophies on a shelf above the aquarium. Cheryl put her finger to her lips to shut him up. Drew did not hear a thing. He continued snoring as I very carefully rolled the covers away from his feet. He was wearing dirty socks. Moving a fraction of an inch per second, I peeled back the socks until his feet, which smelled a little like chlorine and a little like vinegar, were sticking straight up at me. I reached my hand out to Cheryl, and she handed me the nail polish. When Drew woke up in the morning, just as we had thought, he didn't change his socks. And 15 hours after we had left his house, an incredibly embarrassed Drew Landers had to explain to the entire swim team why his toenails were painted red. Willoughby?
Did they like wait for the paint to dry, or did they just stick it?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. Because
Hair dry.
those of you who have painted toenails, or if you have to sit there and blow on them, and I hate to like sit there and blow on his toes, it's gonna be all kinds of creepy. You're like, why does he do that?
He's broken Edward and blow on his toes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
but then it
almost
gets
like a
started,
good
it says-
revenge on them playing the prank. Like, oh, you guys are blowing my dirty toe. So I don't know.
That's like when I'm at the
All right, this next one's the one where we get to the
Cooler blindness.
yeah, color blindness. Eric Kilfoyle, the basketball star, was a sweater. Not like the thing that you wear when you're cold, but sweater as in like, you just like, and like perspiration comes flying out. Not the kind you wear, oh, it's right there. Not the kind you wear, but the kind that drips all over the floor during a basketball game. Antiperspirant didn't help his sweating problem very much. But, as Darren told us, Eric would always roll on a sizable helping of antiperspirant under his arms before going out onto the court. The trick that Abby planned turned out to be much more complicated than it sounded, because not only did we have to switch antiperspirant bottles, we also had to make sure that Eric never saw what he was coating his armpits with. In the end, we had to black out the locker room at the perfect moment just to keep Eric and the rest of the basketball team in the dark as to what was going on. We were all there in the stands when the basketball team came out of the dark locker room and into the gym. Darren looked up from the floor and gave us the OK sign. The team wore their warm-ups to the layup drills. Finally, when the game was about to start, the warm-ups came off, revealing the team uniforms. Eric's was already beginning to look sweaty. It was jump ball, and of course, Eric jumped. His arm went up, and in the excitement, nobody noticed Eric's underarms but the referee. The whistle dropped out of his mouth. The other team had possession of the ball, and Eric ran down the court, taking his position as center of the 2-1-2 zone. His arms went up, and that's when everyone else saw it. Fluorescent green sweat under his arms, soaking the sides of his shirt. Well, the captain of the other team dribbled the ball through the defense, then stopped dead when he saw Eric's little problem. Hey, what's with the armpits, dude? Said the kid at the ball. Now, when somebody says something about your armpits, you have to look. You can't help it, even if you're in the middle of a basketball game. Eric reached under his left arm and came out with a fluorescent green hand. The kid shot a basket over Eric's head to score. Had the joke ended there, we would have been more than satisfied. But it didn't. We didn't count on Eric being colorblind. "I'm bleeding!" cried Eric, stumbling around the court, showing everybody his very green hands. "I'm bleeding! I'm bleeding!" The game sort of stopped as everyone tried to figure out if this could be possible. If it was, Eric must have been an alien. "Help! I'm bleeding! I'm bleeding! Call the nurse!" Everyone was so confused and dumbfounded by this weird turn of events that the nurse was called immediately. The idea being is that he sees green and red as the same color. So for him, the green looks almost the same as red, and so it looks like blood when he pulls his hand out. It looks like it's covered in blood, and that's what freaks him out. Although everyone else sees green, which then freaks him out.
Oh,
even more.
yeah.
So that's double fun. Kids. The most obnoxious of our tricks was the double header. This is the only one of these that kind of bothers me with what I end up doing. It involved two kids, and one of them was lost in space. You see, Mr. Milburn, the science teacher, had a collection of animals in his classroom. Animals that ranged from gerbils to lizards. Tommy Nichols, the 9th grade's foremost brain, kept his pride and joy in Mr. Milburn's room. Octavia, his beloved pet tarantula, Sometime after lunch, Tommy noticed that Octavia was missing. But, try as he might, he could not seem to find her. She was not in her cage. She was not hiding in the bookshelf. It seemed she was not in the room at all. Nobody could find her. Austin, Space, found her. Or should I say, she found him. I was particularly mad at Austin that day, so I couldn't wait to see this trick pulled off. You see, Austin had called me Gopher so much that everyone had started to call me that. I couldn't wait to get back at him. Anyway, it was a rainy day, and so Austin, as well as everyone else, came to school in a hooded jacket. In homeroom, at the end of the day, everyone put on their coats and waited for the bell to ring. Ralphie Sherman saw it first. Hey, Austin, there's something in your hood. Yeah, sure, said Austin, because nobody ever believed a word Ralphie said. If there was something in my hood, would I do this? And Austin, thinking himself pretty clever, put his hood on. When he pulled his hood off again, a tarantula was sitting on his head.
Oh.
Ah! He screamed, running around the room. Get it off me! Get it off me! Get it off me! He wouldn't touch it. The thing was sitting smack on the middle of his head, but he was too grossed out to actually touch it. Well, just like with the snake, everybody in the room, including Mrs. Marlowe, our homeroom teacher, began to scream. Meanwhile, Austin ran around the room with Tommy Nichols running behind him, crying, "Don't hurt her! Don't hurt Octavia! She doesn't bite! She's a good tarantula!" However, when a tarantula is doing push-ups on your scalp, you don't care how good it is, you just want it off. Watching Austin turn white as a ghost was the high point of my day. And then, as if it wasn't bad enough, Octavia got freaked out and tried to climb off. Unfortunately, the easiest way off of Austin's head was down the back of his shirt. Austin fell to the ground, shaking his shirt, but Octavia wouldn't come out. She'd had enough for one day. Austin tore off his shirt, ripping out all the buttons, and Octavia went sailing across the room. When she landed, she wasted no time in racing across the floor for a place to hide. "Don't hurt her!" yelled Tommy Nichols. "She's tame! She's a domesticated spider!" But no one much cared. While most everyone stood on the tables, Octavia scampered around the room between the table legs, and she finally met an untimely end under the heel of Richard Ferguson's shoe. The reason that one bothers me, she killed that poor tarantula. It was just like a pet.
My dad bothers me.